Hi, this is Michael Waits, and welcome back to Insurance for the New Possible, a Chubb conversation. We are joined today by Om Bhatia, the head of digital business for Asia Pacific at Chubb, and Monica Millares, principal product ways of working at BigPay. Thank you both for coming in during this. How are you today?
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
I am super excited to have you. Can you just explain to me what that job title means, if you don't mind?
Oh, it's the
Product ways of working.
Yes. So I'm the product leader within BigPay.
Right.
And as a leader, you get to do a little bit of everything, you could say. You support the team, but at the same time, as we grow as a company, we need to ensure that we have the right ways of working in place, from culture to process to how we all interact with each other, such that we have the best customer outcomes.
Got it.
That I do a mix.
So if I said this the right way, I should say principle, product, and ways of working. Those are like two kinds of things, or they just go together as one? Just go together.
They go as one.
Fair enough. Okay. Before we jump into the main part of this conversation, Monica, let's get a little bit of your background for some context.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Mexico, but by now I'm a citizen of the world. So then I've lived in the UK for about 9 years. Then I've been in Malaysia for 7 years. And I don't like describing myself as a product person that works in FinTech, but instead I like saying I'm a very passionate woman.
Love it.
And I just love what I do for work. And I love my podcast as well. Like, I love fitness. So yeah, I'm full of passion.
What is it about the podcast that you like doing so much?
It's about connection.
Go ahead.
It's two things. Creative expression,
right,
and connection with others.
And what were you doing when you were in London?
Same, I was working in a FinTech.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So this is just what you do.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay. Can you share with us kind of the core, the basic parts of this mission of BigPay?
Okay.
Just distill it down.
Yeah. BigPay, we're here to level up customers' lives one transaction at a time.
Okay.
So what does that mean? If you think about gaming, people go through different levels, right? But sometimes they need a power up. So in BigPay, what we're thinking is we're taking you from here to there. That is different for each customer, but we empower you to to create the life that you want. And that will be different for every single customer that we have.
And do you have examples of that?
Yeah, so for example, one of our customer segments is migrant workers. So we do have a remittance service as such.
Okay.
So if you think of yourself as a Filipino working in Malaysia, you need to send money back home every so often.
Yep, overseas workers.
And for example, sometimes, like in my case, my domestic helper, she may be like, hey, ma'am, I need to pay for the school fees.
Right.
Can I have an advance? Can you lend me some money? So sometimes they don't have access to these services. So what we're doing in BigPay is giving them access. It's about accessibility and keeping it simple for them.
Okay. One more thing before we really jump into this. If money stress alleviation is important to you, and just important at scale, can we at least get a definition of what that is from your perspective, and then maybe from yours as well? What is money stress?
Most of us have money stress.
Right.
And basically that is because we don't have that financial abundance, let's say, to have access to all the education, all the experiences that we want. And instead, we are trying to survive. And when you live life from a survival place, you're constantly in contraction and fear. Versus when you have this abundance, let's say, but let's call it as financial stability or lack of financial stress, then you can just like be the fullest version of yourself. You have access to education, you have access to experiences, and that makes us better humans.
What does it mean to you?
Okay, first, very excited to be here, and I was so excited, and I'm goosebummy to hear you speak about your experience. I love the citizen of the world flag that you flagged. I want to call myself that going forward. But no, money stress is very important from where we are as Chubb or as the insurance segment that we participate in. I want to use an example for this, right? Imagine traditionally what insurance companies sell is a health insurance policy or an accident insurance policy. These are big sum insured, big coverages, big premium. Today, as we observe in various marketplaces, ecosystem, the type of risk and the type of impact has changed a lot. Let me give you an example. In Grab or a ride-hailing firm, the driver, in case the driver is unable to work that day because they're sick, there are three main things that happen to them. One is they have to pay the medical expenses that they have to pay. There's an additional risk or additional cost of them paying the daily rental of that car that they've hired. And third, they suddenly don't have income for that day. So they're out of pocket. So as insurance companies, we are dwelling deeper and deeper into identifying those micro risks so that we can create right propositions, right product in the moment of truth to make sure their financial stress is alleviated, their money stress is alleviated, and they're taken care of. So this is very, very important to what we do.
Yeah, this idea of contraction and fear is really scary. I think it's an underestimated thing. I really do. I don't think people use the word abundant, right? And you didn't say rich, you didn't say anything, you just said abundance. And I think it's a really interesting way to approach this. If you have enough food on the table, right, you don't understand what it means to be hungry.
Exactly.
And if you don't have enough resource, if you have enough resource, if you have abundant resources, then you don't understand what it's like, the feeling you have inside of, what am I going to do, right? So how do you help disintermediate that as big pay? Like, where does that come in, right? Where does big pay fit into that concept of we want to take you from not having abundance into abundance? And there are multiple steps there and multiple kind of strategies and things that you can do. What does that look like from your perspective?
Yeah, so we see ourselves as the Apple Health of your financial life. So you should be able to track your expenses. You should be able to know, okay, cool, this is all the money coming in. This is my budget for the month or for the year. And then basically, as you go through the month, you will be able to monitor how well you're doing or not.
Can I ask you this though? To actually have that be effective, the recording of all of these transactions, right? And just the counting of all the income that you have has to be really easy. I've tried to do this so many times. And it didn't matter what my income level was, right? When I was doing it, because I think in life, your income level does this. Hopefully it's always on kind of an up and to the right thing, but you're not always making more than you did last year. That's just normal. It feels like most people are. I don't think that's true, right? But the point is, how do you make it frictionless for people? Because I did it a bunch of times and then I just gave up.
That is the key. If we get customers to do that manually,
right,
then it's very easy to stop. But then BigPay, we're a payments company. So we see all your transactions. Therefore, we can visualize it for you in such a way that it's easy. So our job is to make it simple.
For individuals. Mm-hmm. So not for businesses.
No, we're a B2C company.
So I always wondered, right, like I'm just going to say the name of this software that I use. I used Quicken when it first came out because I thought this is going to change my life, right? But it was so manual. And I always wondered as it progressed, and I don't use it anymore, why they didn't have a payment thing in there. Because if I could pay through there, what you're suggesting then is I don't have to track anything. It's naturally being tracked, right?
Yeah, we have something similar in an insurance domain as well. One is about, we call it a coverage wallet. We talk about the coverages or the type of risk that you are insured, and based on the type of transactions, whether you have a family, whether you are taking a certain lifestyle decisions, purchases, we can show the gaps there are. So
and is that automated as well?
Automated. So automated, and with Chubb Studio, it's not limited to just Chubb policies. As long as we are with a partner ecosystem, we are able to automatically showcase the coverages that you have and recommend the outstanding coverages that you get. Again, it's not limited to Chubb policies, but limited to the ecosystem.
Interesting. So if you have other people that have other policies outside of Chubb, they can still put that in the coverage wallet.
Yeah,
and you're indifferent to that.
Yeah. So for any of our partners, and they have multiple insurers in some scenarios, then we are able to digest all that data and show the right next step and the gaps or the limitations that they should.
So how does this work at BigPay? Right, because do I need to use it for everything that I'm paying for? Like, how does that work?
Well, the more transactions we have in BigPay, then the more you can see.
Sure.
Of course, you can use BigPay with your physical card. You can also have it a virtual card, or even with QR payments in Malaysia or in Southeast Asia. So actually, you're covering a broad range of transactions: offline, online, QR payments, domestic and international.
So again, just walk me through this. So if I go to take the BTS in Thailand, which I do almost every day, I pay through prompt pay. So I'm already doing it in a way that's digital. Do you have a layer on top of that? A layer behind? Like, where does it fit? So that if I want to use it, because I feel like I want to use it, so I can get better organized. And I get, because again, when I first started using prompt pay, I started putting little notes in. This is for groceries, this is for that. And then it's, sometimes I was just like, never mind, right? But I'd love to have access to that data. And that's what you're suggesting. Because it doesn't matter, again, if you have abundance or if you lack abundance, it should still work, right? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so let's say my Big Pay account is a Malaysia Big Pay account.
Right.
I come to Thailand and I've been scanning with my Malaysia Big Pay Thailand's prompt pay.
Okay.
So that is feasible. Therefore, when I see my feed of transactions, I see, let's say in the past week, all the transactions that I did in Malaysia on my way to Thailand and all the card transactions, the ATM withdrawals and QR payments that I've been doing these few days. I can also see the category. And let's say that if the category is not correct, as a customer, I can just go and change the category, and therefore my analytics will reflect.
What do you do for cash payments?
Within Big Pay?
Yeah.
I know, that one, it's
hard though, right?
The only one that you would have to track manually.
Okay. But is it true in Malaysia? It's definitely true in Singapore that fewer and fewer payments are getting made by cash.
Yeah.
But again, we live in big metropolises. You live in KL probably, right?
Yes.
So if you're living like in Kelantan or something, a little bit further out, is that true as well? I mean, Singapore's sort of contained, right? So it's a different story. And I don't know if the government is mandating this or not, but it's very hard to use cash in Singapore now.
I think the pandemic definitely accelerated
For
the
sure.
use of digital payment drastically across the world. People are habituated, but
Yep.
there is definitely, it's not a geography necessarily, but a segment, an age segment that stays with cash more often
Fair enough.
than not. But most of the geographies are now covered with the QR technology that is in most
Yeah, I
regions.
think the ecosystem has done a great job such that now everyone can just pay with QR,
Yeah.
almost everything.
I do for almost everything I pay.
Yeah.
Can I scan this? I was telling Martin before that I literally took a motorcycle from my condo to the closest BTS station because it was just too hot for me to walk. And I'm like, oh, this guy's never going to take scanning. He's just not, it's not going to work for him. So I asked him, because I didn't have cash and I felt really bad. And I got off the motorcycle and I said to him, can I scan? And he just pointed to the front of his motorcycle. It had the QR code on the front. And I was so happy because I just thought like that's the depths to which these digital like transformations actually happened.
Can I add one of my experience here in Thailand?
Please.
I was at one of the night markets the other night trying to buy things as everybody does when they come to Thailand.
Right.
And I'm telling you, a lot of shops, the few shops that I stopped by, if they didn't have QR payment, I couldn't buy. I wasn't carrying cash.
Right.
And that's now not just a customer experience or the delight, it is loss of income for a lot of partners.
Yeah.
So what you do is very, very important to a lot of businesses.
So if I have Big Pay, and just having the transaction in the system is not enough, right? But what are the things that then the system outputs for me so that I can understand? Right? Because if the idea is to make people's lives better, to at least teach them how to take a few steps towards abundance, right? What does the system do so that it allows people to understand, if I just do that thing I did a few more times kind of thing, right? Then I will save a little bit more, or I can invest a little bit more. Like, well, how does that work?
Yeah, so it's a mix of A, making it simple, B, visualizing it.
So you
Making
have
it-
charts and graphs and stuff like that?
Yes,
Sorry, go
make it
ahead.
easy for customers to visually see it. And then also to have prompts.
So what does that mean though, right? In other words, if I'm just like buying, and I'm maybe buying too much, will I get a prompt that says, slow down, cowboy kind of thing? Do you know what I mean? Like you're buying too much?
So as an industry, we cannot be too patronizing and say, hey, you're buying too much. But what we can do is to help you build self-awareness of how much you've been buying.
Right.
So that's what we can do as an industry.
What does it look like though?
That
Is there an app? There's a Big Pay app, yeah?
So let's say that you create your budget, and then if you start spending, and then you start getting near the budget, but it's still like at the beginning of the month, we would prompt you to tell you, hey, this is basically a behavior that you need to be aware of. And this is still like in the builds within Big Pay. It's about to go live soon.
But it's very powerful. What you can do is improve habits of money management, right? You can improve people in terms of limiting or training them how to budget, but also making sure that the right investments are happening, savings happening. It's really empowering the user. So it's very interesting.
And you use the right word, that it's habits. So that's what we're trying to build, to help people build the habits as such. Because if you think about it, like going to the gym, same, you will not get like super strong once. You need to build the habit of going to the gym. So similar with your finances, we need to help people build the habit.
This is something that's interesting for us as insurers also. We want to make sure we don't just protect the downside of people. How do we nudge them in the right direction? So everything that you're saying is very inspiring of how do we use data with our partners and nudge them into making the right habitual decisions to protect themselves. So it's great.
So can I ask this? We operate in markets where, let's just say, financial literacy is not as high as it might be. And even I studied economics in college, and I worked on Wall Street for like 20 years. But I don't know if I'd be able to come up with a good budget. And like you said, you don't want to be patronizing to people, but I think we need to back up a little bit and talk about this idea of financial literacy, right? And like how to educate people about what a budget actually is, right? Because again, you said this earlier, if you always feel like you're on the precipice of having nothing, the idea of creating a budget, you don't even have the mental throughput to be able to figure that out. So how do you solve that problem? Just teaching people about what they really need to do and what a budget actually looks like.
Yes, I'll turn that question around.
Please.
Because many of us assume that when you are under financial stress, you don't have a budget. But actually, research has shown that on the contrary,
Really?
people have a budget in their minds.
In their mind,
because
okay.
You go grocery shopping and you know yogurt costs this much, beans are this much, veggies are this much, I cannot afford that meat, it's too expensive. And then you are doing all this calculus in your mind. It's just not written down the way that some people call it. Like,
Right. But it should be, right? In other words, to have this be effective, it has to be written down. Because
Exactly.
I was doing this today. I literally went to the supermarket today to buy some things, and I'm like, how much have I spent on this already this month, kind of thing? Sorry, go ahead.
Definitely.
Yeah. If I could just add to that, affordability is definitely a caution. Our budget, even for an insurance policy, many a times people try and see that as a transactional value, very small because it's insurance, but there is a value to a price ratio
Absolutely.
in people's mind all the time. Writing down from a monthly management or an annual management makes sense. But we work very hard in order to make sure the value that we're giving and the price that we're giving is always tested. It's always something we're maximizing from a customer benefit perspective. So the more data and the more kind of work we can do towards it to make sure we are adding value at the right price point of the customers is very, very important.
How do you, as a company, help educate people? Right? Because I do have a budget in my head, but boy, I'd love to have a budget in a spreadsheet somewhere, right, on an app somewhere, so that as I did get close, I didn't have to think about, am I buying the right laundry detergent?
Yeah.
Which is what I was getting this morning, right?
So what we need to start doing is putting ourselves in the shoes of customers, right?
Right.
People don't think budget.
No, they don't.
We don't. No one does.
No.
And we don't
We
say,
can talk about it all we
"Yay."
want, but yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's not like, yay, it's Sunday, I'm going to sit down and work on my spreadsheet.
But there is a new trend. I hear people go on staycations or vacations, partners do, and kind of list down, whiteboard their budgets. I've watched that on social media these days. So if people are, hopefully it's not a trend. You get more and more people watching it and then following and getting into the discipline. But if I can add our industry lens to it, what we try and do is we don't research and ask people just how much would you pay for an insurance or how much risk do you want. We research the ancillary expenditure that they have. For example, we ask people across geographies, so what's the emergency cash that you need should something bad happen? We ask people, if you were to choose a hospital for whatever reason, which hospital would you choose? Then choose, according to that, the bed rate of that hospital to find our coverages. We ask people how much they spend on meals on their afternoons or work hours to see what the affordability is for a price point. So we're moving on from asking, will you buy insurance? Would you buy an insurance that is 10,000 pesos versus 20,000 pesos? It's about what are the type of transactions that you're doing for us to package the right product, and then we test the hell out of it to make sure we're making the right hypothesis.
Yeah, and building on your point, about the trends. Now we also have different cohorts. We have the Gen Zs. And yes, social media is a thing. TikTok is a thing. Influencers, that's how they call them, are present, right? And basically they are playing the role of financial education. Most of us didn't get that during our school years.
No.
But then what people are doing now that it's becoming a trend is what's called loud budgeting. So if you invite me to, I don't know, Friday, there's this dinner or whatever it may be, I may come back and say, sorry, I cannot go because it's out of my budget. And that's socially acceptable.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
wow,
there is a
really?
change. There is a change that's going on. And that is super cool.
When I was in my 20s, you could never say that.
Exactly.
It would have been like too embarrassing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It
I
would have been
remember
too
my
embarrassing.
mom negotiating. I was like 12 or 13. I wanted a watch from a shop, and my mom was very, very tight in terms of these unnecessary expenditure. And
Good
I
for her.
saw this Aladdin dancing watch on one of those showrooms, and I said, "Please want it." I did all my nagging. Eventually, for her to go, okay, I'll come by. We went inside, and she tried to negotiate, and I was so offended. I said, "You don't even want to buy it." Like,
As a 12-year-old.
yeah, as a 12-year-old. But that's a proof point of budgeting was very well entrenched in our previous generation. This generation, I feel like we're not doing enough, and maybe the next generation does get back to it.
Yeah, but the key point is about like we are uncomfortable talking about money
Yeah.
in a social setting.
Yeah.
So we don't, and it's like weird. And
Yeah.
me saying, no, I cannot go because it's not part of my budget.
Well
It,
said.
like you said, it's embarrassing, but it's becoming more and more acceptable.
But it shouldn't be embarrassing. Like
It
the amount
shouldn't.
Of
It
let's just say,
shouldn't.
like out loud, the amount of money you have should not define like who you are. It's like if you can't afford the most fancy steak, it doesn't make you either unworthy or unintelligent or anything. Anyway, I want to get back to something because I want to make sure that I remember what you said. You said you would define yourself as what kind of woman? Or forget the exact terminology you used because I want to reference it for a second.
Oh, probably I said energetic woman.
Who loves what she
energetic,
does?
passionate. I love what I do. Yeah.
So-
Passionate, she said. She's
Yeah,
a
an
passionate-
energetic,
Yeah.
passionate woman, right?
Yeah.
So I love that. So I want to ask you this. If you're really passionate about what you're doing, and I always say, like, to be good at something, we talked about this on the phone, right? I always say to be good at something, you just need to be educated enough and try hard. But to be great at something, you actually have to care, right? So that care, that empathy is, how do you build that empathy into this development of products? Because you clearly care about this, right? You're not just trying to build this product to get this client to make this money. So what role does empathy play, and then how does it play out in the development of these products?
I think it starts with people, exactly, people who really care. Those people who care at the same time, when they are in an informal or formal leadership role,
Right.
they influence the people around you.
For sure.
So it is as a team, you create a culture where you put empathy first, where you really care about customers. You're not just like building some flows and shipping some product.
Right.
You really care about customers as a team. But that starts from the heart as such, rather than from the mind.
I mean, for us, that's extremely important. The empathy, how we define empathy.
You have to. You're protecting people.
Yeah.
If you don't care, like, what are you doing?
Yeah,
right?
exactly. For us, how I would now kind of express empathy is making sure the products, the services meet the expectation of our customers. We are there at the time of need, and the coverages are sufficient to cover the downsides that they're facing. They're being there in the customer's place of mind. An example comes to me is one of our wallet partners, FinTech partners in Philippines. One of the new products that we write with them is cyber, but nobody wants to buy cyber insurance, right? But we work with our partner to understand the type of scams, the type of impersonation people are doing, pretending to be your father, your daughter,
Right.
or parent, asking people to transfer money. There are also employment scams. There are purchase scams. So after learning that ecosystem, we now have a product protecting you against account takeovers, impersonations, and these scams. This for us was very important because people were losing thousands of pesos in their wallets.
Tons of money.
And we want to make sure if that happens to you, while you try and educate everybody about safe habits, doing the right thing, not sharing your passwords. You want to make sure there's a safety net at the end of it, because this amount of money is extremely important and life-changing for a lot of people. And that's one of the examples how we want to make sure we're there for our customers and our partner ecosystems.
Yeah, and to build on that, it's that, and building on empathy as well, it's we need to acknowledge that money is emotional. It's not transactional. Money is a very emotional subject for everyone. So talking about moments of truth, when this happens and I need insurance, let's say something happens health-wise and I need my insurance, your emotions are all over the place. Your mind is all over the place. The insurance gives you some peace of mind, let's say, but that applies across all the different touch points, across all the financial services that we can offer.
I want to get back to something again. You said at the beginning, Mexican, born in Mexico, right? I love this smile. You're like, yeah, I am. And I'm pretty happy about it as well. I love it. I love it. And worked in London, probably traveled all over the world. Now you live in KL, right? I just want to talk about like how living and working in different places, like what are the unique challenges of different geographies, if that makes sense, right? You have clients in 54 countries in the world, so same thing. And you don't have to reference Big Pay per se, but just like what are some of the challenges and differences you have to be aware of? And what are some of the differences? Like what's the difference between living in Mexico and buying financial services and living in London?
Very real scenario is if you go to Mexico City, there's a lot of inequality. And then you can be driving, and next to you, you have Santa Fe, that it's like the most luxurious boroughs. And then across the street, you have the slums.
Okay.
So the inequality is very visible as such.
Palpable, yeah.
And many people don't have access to financial services. And probably that's why I'm so passionate about this, right? Because like since we were kids,
right.
Like my parents were like, you need to be grateful that you have, like we were not rich, but
right.
we were not poor.
Right.
But we were very aware of what we had because the person next to us didn't. And you could see the girls in the streets, like teenagers with babies,
right.
just like working, selling sweets
right.
in the streets while we were in a car.
Right.
That difference, you don't see it in London. So when you start building products, if you've grown in the UK throughout your life, that picture doesn't come to your mind.
Right, you don't know it.
No, exactly.
Right.
Well, for me, that's like real.
Right. But then it brings up this interesting point though, right? Because in your head, there's that, like you said, that teenage girl with the baby across the street, but it doesn't exist when you're in London, at least not in a way that's as visible, right? So it's there, but it's just not as visible, right? Because there's not the same connectivity. But you still have to design products that are global at scale, right? Because if you're trying to build a big business, you have to try to figure out like, how do I build products that resonate with everybody? And getting back to the empathy, it's like, I need to know how do I care about what they care about everywhere, right? So again, for someone like you who's lived in a bunch of different places, and for you as well, because you live out here, it's easier. But how do you do that, right? Because you want to build this thing because you know it's going to work in Mexico. I'm just as an example, right? But you still have people in London you need to serve, and people in KL, and people in Thailand. They're all different, right? How do you do that? And then the question on top of that is, then how do you maintain like the one brand image as well? Or it doesn't even matter? It's kind of two questions in one.
So this is where I put on my product hat.
Right.
So basically, we need to look at the customer journey. So when I'm buying a financial service, like I said, I don't think about savings or investments. I'm thinking about my life and what's the journey in that specific thing. So let's say travel.
Right.
Planning, I'm inspired to travel. I plan out travel. I do the travel. I come back. And I take each of these parts of the journey and I distill them into what are the jobs to be done that I have to do during these specific parts of the journey. And then I also look at the emotional journey. By looking at the emotional journey and combining that with the jobs to be done as such, when you step back, you're like, oh, that's an opportunity for a pain point that's unsolved. And then basically you can map these journeys And many of them, they are global because it's the human experience of travel. It cannot change that drastically from Mexico,
Right.
Thailand, and the UK.
Right.
But then there's an element of, you may do a global product, but you do need to localize in a way or another.
But that teenage girl with the baby is not traveling.
No,
So how
that
do you
was
then-
an example.
I understand. But then how do you, because you also talked about this idea of personalization, right? And technology gives us the ability, or at least is just about to give us the ability to really personalize some of these journeys, experiences, and products.
Yeah.
But that girl also she's earning income, right? She should save a little bit, like all these things. How do we address that as well?
Well, in that case, great example. In your mind, this girl is earning income.
Yeah.
In my mind, this girl comes from an indigenous community. Then she went to Mexico City, for example, the big city, and she lives in the streets.
Right. Shows you what I know, though, right? Yeah. I
Yeah.
have no idea what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
She lives in the streets. She sells sweets. And then there's organized, I don't know how to call them, organized communities, let's say,
Right.
that they manage them and they take the money away
Got
from
it.
them. So she's in an extreme scenario of survival.
Got it. Okay.
So to solve that, we need governments, we need institutions to really help change the system.
So it's not a financial inclusion, financial literacy problem. I get it.
It's way bigger than that.
I get it.
For me, because you asked that question going back to Asia versus Latin America,
Right.
I think so many similarities before I talk about the differences, like passionate, warm, aspirational people in both the regions. I mean, we can look at the side of, there's not enough literacy or there's scope of empowering them. That is what we are in business and that is what we do. But it is absolutely brilliant from a culture and aspiration perspective. Where I think the difference I observe is the type of aspirations people have depending on where they are in which part of the world, right? Something, for example, in one of Southeast Asian region may be aspirational to rent a car and get into an ecosystem to start earning money. For another place, it could be get into a housing setup or a place where you can find an accommodation in the middle of the night. So there are different levels. For us, again, I loved your question of how do you build a global program while there's so much amount of personalized needs available.
Right.
We, of course, do that with technology, but we also do that with process and learning and research. We try and make sure technology is flexible. It's able to cater from an output perspective to the different leads, whether it's a coverage A versus a premium B versus a sum insured C. We try and keep that flexible, but research into what does this person in this market need and what is that combination, and then make sure it's tested and it's delivering the needs and the promises.
Got it. I feel like there's so much to do here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I say I'm passionate about the topic.
I know.
It's so much to do at a global level, across all the industries, across all segments, across all products. It's a big pain point.
Yeah, but it's nice to wake up every day and do the thing you really love to do, but also feel like you're having impact. And
Yes.
I can always tell when I talk to people, and I talk to thousands of people, right? I can always tell when I speak with people that not only do they care about what they're doing, but they're excited about it as well. They feel like they're having that impact, like you're smiling. Both of you are smiling. And I don't think you're faking it for the camera, if you know what I mean. So one last thing, and I'll let you both go. What's coming? Like, what's coming? What do you think? There's a whole bunch of new tech coming out there, but what's going to be the use of that tech then to get people to the point where you want them to be?
Yeah. My personal view is that for us to have impact, the worldwide impact that we have, the future of the industry is to be more human.
Tell me what that means.
It is not starting with, this is the API that we need to use. This is AI. It needs to start with, this is the customer. This is the problem statement. This is the use case. This is what we're going to help them with. Therefore, we're using all these technologies. And then if we put ourselves in that frame of mind, then basically what we're saying, it's like, hey, we're here to help our customers win and have specific outcomes to have like better lives with money, let's say. And then we say, therefore, how do we use AI? How do we use the metaverse? How do we use blockchain such that we use all these technologies as enablers of customer outcomes?
I love that. I was going to use the word enablers as well. I think technology will start and continue to be easier and easier for us to apply while the enabler technology, but to meet customers' needs better and better, to get even closer and more meaningful to the customers that we are trying to serve.
Om Bhatia, the head of digital business for Asia Pacific at Chubb, and Monica Millares, the principal product ways of working at BigPay, and somebody who's really, really passionate about what she does. Thank you so much for doing this. I really
Thank you,
appreciate
Michael.
both of your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.